Speaking of pressing forward, I want to thank the thousands of folks that responded to our call for prayer over the last few weeks for Congress and the election of a speaker. Those prayers have been answered, and we're thankful. Well, this morning I spoke with Congressman Mike Johnson and told him we would ask people to pray for the next 21 days for him and for the Congress, because it's going to be critical in correcting the course of this Congress. And so I ask you, will you join me in praying? We have a 21-day prayer guide available. To join us, simply text the word speaker to 67742. That's the word speaker to 67742. You take the prayer pledge, you'll get the prayer points, and we'll let Speaker Johnson know that you're praying for him in the House of Representatives as we move forward. All right, just got word that they are voting on the House floor right now, so Congressman Scalise is going to be a little late getting to us. I'm going to go to Brent Keilen, FRC Action, and he's also our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives here at the Family Research Council. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the landscape looks like going forward into 2024. Now, obviously, this puts the Republicans on better footing. I think we're going to see some very strong things coming out of this Congress with some very principled, God-directed leadership. It's going to make a big difference, but we've got some other things to look at. Brent, welcome back. Tell us what those other things we're looking at are.
Well, Tony, the landscape is an interesting one to watch when we look at the House majority. So we have the new speaker, but the current GOP majority is a slim one. And our viewers and listeners will remember the current House GOP majority is the only thing that's standing in the way of a Democrat trifecta. They have the Senate and they have the House, the presidency. So that makes the House that much more important. And the current GOP can only afford to lose about 5 votes in order to pass anything through. And so very, very important. It makes every seat that much more important. And so what we're watching now particularly is the redistricting. This happens every 10 years, so it happened back in 2020, but there have been a number of court cases that are still working their way through the court system. There's about 10 to 12 states where this is happening. It's estimated this could potentially affect anywhere between 14 to 18 House seats, and that could sway the majority one way or the other. The big states that we're watching are New York, where it's possible that Democrats could actually pick up to 6 more seats, depending on how the process plays out there. And then North Carolina, on the other side, there have been some court rulings there where they're redrawing some lines, could potentially pick up to 4 additional GOP House seats. And then the other states have 1 or 2 potentially in play. So, Tony, it just makes, again, every seat that much more important, and the majority going into 2024 is really anything but certain at this point.
Yeah, and I think we saw in the last election, the midterm election, there was this anticipation or this projection of a red wave. But what we found over the last, now we've gone through literally 20 years of redistricting based upon a more conservative census. And of course, that's what's being challenged in court, because we saw in 2010, we saw states move red and electing Republicans. They redrew the lines. And so we've had, very conservative districts. There's just not a lot of middle ground anymore. So now it's being fought out in the courts. And that's, 1 or 2 seats one way, as we're seeing now with this current Congress, can make the difference.
Tony, that's exactly right. Yeah, and looking at the way those lines got redrawn, as you pointed out, we do not have as many swing districts. So on the one hand, that means a majority for one party or the other could be a bit more solid, because even if the number isn't as high, that they're likely to retain it. But that also makes these seats in the middle that much more important, because there are still swing seats. They're just are not as many of them as we typically have seen historically when we're watching this sort of thing.
I want to go to what took place today in the House. It looks like Steve Scalise is going to be tied up on the House floor. We may get him later in the program, but this is the challenge of doing a program live in the afternoon when the House is in session. So I want to go to some of the comments from now Speaker Mike Johnson on the floor and the tone that he set. And this is why I'm very optimistic that this is a first. Mike is a different type of leader, and I think this is going to give the Republicans an advantage because he's casting a vision. I want to play clip number 8, please.
I want to tell all my colleagues here what I told the Republicans in that room last night. I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture, the Bible, is very clear that God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you, all of us. And I believe that God has ordained and allowed each one of us to be brought here for this specific moment in this time. This is my belief. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use the gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it, and to ensure that our republic remains standing as the great beacon of light and hope and freedom in a world that desperately needs it.
That's not a message we've heard from the House floor very often. And this is, it was interesting to watch as he's making that speech. I was on Newsmax earlier talking about it. But social media was blowing up on the left. This was just making their heads explode. But this is Congressman Mike Johnson. I mean, he is a man of deep faith, and he is going to lead that way. And that's what, in part, made him attractive to his colleagues.
Tony, it's just so encouraging. This really is a breath of fresh air. You look at how key this position is. I mean, this is the person that's really going into these meetings, as you have pointed out earlier, with leaders like Chuck Schumer and things like that. And we need somebody who gets that perspective and just how important that is. So key. And it's just really encouraging to see somebody who has this in this type of position for the country.
I want to play another clip of his remarks. I think we got time to work this in. Talking about this is something he shared with me that he just felt impressed in this process to lay out. This was about 2 weeks ago. He felt like the door was going to open for him. And anyway, this is something he laid out in terms of core principles that this Congress needs. Clip 10. In
his farewell address, President Reagan explained the secret of his rapport with people. And I like to paraphrase his explanation all the time. He said, they call me the great communicator, but I really wasn't that. He said, I was just communicating great things. And they're the same great things that have guided our nation since its founding. What are those great things? I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but let me concede to you all, I think it's really quintessentially the core principles of our nation. I boil them down to individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Those are the foundations that made us the extraordinary nation that we are. And you and I today are the stewards of those principles. The things that have made us the freest, most powerful, most successful nation in the history of the world. The things that have made us truly exceptional.
I mean, again, he was not combative. He was basically, in fact, he was jovial. In fact, it was very interesting watching some of the other reporters report on this. That they said they felt like there was joy in the House chamber. And so, that there was a sense, as I talked to Mike before he made his speech this afternoon, there was just a sense of peace and confidence, and I think that came across, and I think it filled the room there, and I think Republicans now have hope.
Tony, I think this also underscores just how important the call for prayer is that you mentioned at the beginning of the program. We need leaders, good leaders in this position. This is also a difficult position, like we were talking about earlier. you can only afford to lose about 5 votes in the House to pass anything. And there's a lot of very good members in the House, but there's also some moderate Republicans. There's disagreements, some pretty deep disagreements in the caucus about some things. And so this is not an easy job. And I just want to reiterate what you were saying there. This is a great step, but the call for prayer and continuing to hold our leaders up in prayer in positions like this is just going to be so important moving forward.
It absolutely is, and it's interesting. The attacks are already beginning on him. Brent Keilen, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tony. Good to be with you.